Theme music. The show. Hello, people. Welcome to Post Training. I am joined. Hello, people. That's
Hello.
Dan. Dan, that's your intro.
Hello, people.
All right, fair enough. All right, fine, Dan. If you're so clever, then you introduce the show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Post Training. I'm Dan. This is Sal and John. We're here to talk to you about how horrible we did this week.
You know what? Actually, that was pretty good, Dan. I appreciate that.
I'm ready for a podcast now, John. I'm ready.
Good.
I'm ready.
We're not gonna do too much inside baseball, but as this is Sal's first time, welcome, Sal. How are you?
Welcome to Sal.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sal is the lead head wizard of the Freemasons.
Yeah. It's probably more like the stonecutters from, The Simpsons than the Freemasons. But yeah, sure.
Is there a rock of shame and then a rock of triumph, or like a mace of shame and a mace of triumph?
Yes, there is. Absolutely, there is.
Yeah. That four-headed mace from on it. That's the one of shame because I can't use
mace.
That.
Yeah. I think that's what they call it, the quad mace.
Yeah.
Is that an actual thing?
Cool.
Yes.
Oh wow.
It's got are they like demon head, like demon faces, or like Tengu? What are they? I don't know.
They're like Tengu, or maybe they're gorilla faces. I can't remember. I don't have one, but I see it all the time because lots of people use them.
Yeah, it's cool looking.
Definitely. I have, as I think I mentioned before somewhere, is that I had the only thing I've ever done with even remotely close to sell what you do is when the pandemic started, I ran to a larger store here, and I was like, "Where are the masks?" And they were like, "We don't have any." I was like, "All right, wear the cloth." So I was just like bandanaing it for like 2 weeks, and I was just kind of like, I guess the best thing to say is like 80s movie. Everyone grabs like different items in the store to kind of defend the last big battle. And the last thing, I was just walking through the aisles, and I just saw a giant sledgehammer, and I was like looking at like $30 for a respirator mask, $30 for a steel hammer, because the world could go sideways. And
on your way out.
Wise choice. Yes, wise choice.
And I used it. I think I used it a little similar to what you were doing. I was doing like the Subi type of motion with it, but I'd always kind of tweak my back when I did that. But I don't want this to be like, Sal, teach us about steel mace, because I know you get that a lot. But I guess we'll pass it to Sal and just ask Sal, how was your week of training?
That was great. Yeah, let's see. So today's Friday. I kind of don't. I train every day, so it's hard. Sometimes it's hard for me to think about looking about what I did just this week, because I sort of do at least something every day of the week. But I think in particular, this week was probably more of a light week for me. I was pretty sore because I've been working more on my yoga and just some of the different poses, and working a lot on inversions and handstands. So my upper body's pretty sore lately. So I haven't done a whole lot of mace this week, but mostly been focusing just on a lot of yoga stuff this week.
Is that what you try to combine into your week of training between martial arts and yoga a lot?
It's weird. So I typically I go to when I wrap up work at the end of the day. I head straight to the dojo, and I usually have about an hour and a half to kill before I have to teach a class. And I just usually grab the nearest thing I can find, which is usually a mace, and I start working with it. And then between mace sets. Maybe I'm doing some yoga stuff. Maybe I'm running kata. Maybe I get bored with that and I grab a rope. So I kind of just, go fly by the seat of my pants when it comes to my training. But all of it is just sort of, tied to just making my karate better. But yeah, it just depends on how my body's feeling. I don't really go in with any kind of plan, but yeah, because I do yoga quite a bit. I always try to make time for, I treat it like karate. It's something that you have to practice. It's something you have to, work on your form and your technique and your mindfulness and just sort of how you approach it. I take the same approach to my yoga that I do to my karate. And so I try to give all those things a little bit of attention throughout the week in some way.
Do you find that your free play before classes, do you find that it helps flow into the classes that you teach? Do you have those planned already?
Yeah, it's funny. Tuati asked me a similar question, and yeah, I don't really go into my classes with any kind of plan either, because I found that anytime I would plan a class out, somebody wouldn't show up for class, or you didn't have the right number of people to do the partner exercise that you had sort of so carefully planned out throughout your whole day, and then your plans are sort of wasted. It's that no plan survives first contact with the enemy kind of thing. But yeah, sometimes I'll find myself working on something before class, and I'll try to work that, whatever that concept is or whatever, I'll try to work it into maybe the warm up that we do, and before we get into some of the more formal kihon or kata or whatever we're going to be doing. But some sort of calisthenic, or I'll have the class work with maces sometimes, or elastic bands, just different things to help them get specific parts of their body warmed up. But yeah, it just sort of depends.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't plan classes either. I'll do themes, right? Like I'll have this month is the theme. We were doing Pasai, so we're in a Pasai theme.
Yeah.
This month. Next month will be more of a Naihanchi theme. But I don't plan out classes. I'm just not that organized. My brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if Pasai, if that actually does mean breaking down the fortress or not. And so I was just thinking the Pasai theme of the month. All right, guys, we're going to learn how to break into a fort. And so if there's some way of making that a theme rather than just the kata itself, but more abstracting it somehow. And you do with a regular class in the last 15 minutes, you talk of strategy. Essentially.
You're all going to fashion yourself a battering ram out of paper mache, and we're going to work on smashing down walls.
There you go. That sounds like fun.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll do the themed approach, but maybe it's more on a weekly basis. So if I get into a particular theme on a Monday, we might continue to work through that in different ways throughout the week. It just sort of just depends. On who's coming to class and who's around and what they need to work on for their next test or something. So yeah, I do try to rotate and mix it up a bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Dan, how about you? How about we get a seminar report from you, because we were going to try to get that last week.
So yes, I was lucky enough. I got to travel up north and teach in some other dojang this weekend. It was great. Flying was great. It was the first time I've flown since the pandemic. And so I was a little nervous. I had my vaccination card already, they're going to ask me questions. They didn't care. I mean, it was just like normal. ID, show your face. Okay, I'm really him. Yeah, go. Get on the plane, same, scan your phone. Everything there was no difference whatsoever. So that was really nice. But the workshop was good. I'm very much a principle-based martial artist. So you can go to anybody and learn a form. I'm not gonna come up and teach you a form. I'm gonna come up. We're gonna play with this weekend was specifically playing with the Shipsum Say, the 13 influences from Taiji Chuan, and how that fits into karate. So we literally looked at the first move in our basic form number 1, which is a low block to the left. And then we did the first movement in our third Gicho form, which is an inside-outside and a back stance to the left. And we did that from a clinch position, and we looked at, what is creating pung, what is creating li, what is creating this roll out, this rollback energy, this neutralization, how to neutralize the opponent, how to control the opponent. We talked a lot about emptiness and fullness in your legs, and et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of this stuff doesn't get covered a whole lot in my lineage, in my system. So sometimes it's kind of mind blowing for some people. Sometimes it's not. But I think the biggest issue, or the biggest cool thing that I came across was, you always got that. It was got that one guy who's like, oh, when they get it, and one guy, we were doing the inside outside, and it's very common for us to want to use the muscles and want to pick them up. We want to get underneath them. We want to pick them up like this. And, when you look at Taiji theory, if I want somebody to go up, I have to go down. I don't go up. I don't try to lift them up by picking myself up. I lift them up by dropping myself, getting underneath them. And so when we got like just even that small, oops, sorry, somebody's trying to call me, that small little intricacy, and he went,
I thought you were getting a fax.
A fax, yeah. Let's go back in time. Man, the fax machine was created in like 1865. It's crazy.
I still get faxes today.
1800s. You had, yeah, back in time. But anyway, so like watching people kind of do that, and then the technique works, and it works effortlessly, and then they get to that point where they go, this isn't right. This can't be right. And you go, why? Because it shouldn't be this easy. That's what I like. I like when people get to that point.
Yeah.
So that was my big takeaway. So I used that drill this whole week, and we worked it this whole week with everybody.
Nice.
Yeah.
You said that those types of things are not typically taught in your system. So were you not, when you came up, in your early training, you weren't taught those things?
No.
So where did you pick them up?
So Taiji Chuan.
Okay.
And then when I met my current teacher, like it was one of those things where like, I'm talking to him. Our first phone call was like 4 hours long, and I'm talking to him, and I'm telling him all these things, and he goes, oh yeah, yep, that's right. And I was going, yeah, this guy, I like this guy, because he went back to Korea and trained in Korea. He trained in China. His wife is Chinese, so he's not just a Tung Soo guy from the United States, right? So there's a lot of depth to our system, and it's sad because our lineage founder talked about it. He wrote about it, but nobody practiced it.
Gotcha.
And so it's not the system's fault; it's the teacher's fault.
Right.
Oh yeah, blame the system founder. Yeah, that blame the guy who's not around.
No, it's not the system founder's fault. Not his fault. He put it in the books. He made sure that people knew. He said, look here. There's a part in the book where he literally says almost word for word the internal work. He talks about the Ship Some Say, the 13 influences from Taiji Chuan. He talks about the 6 roads, which are like these Neigong postures, right? And then the Shiptang Gum, which are sitting Qigong postures. He says these should form the foundation of your combat. And yet nobody does anything.
Well, I think that goes into difference between principle. Principle, I think, is a great thing to teach, but I think there's principle and then there's practicality, and then if there isn't that kind of intermediary to be like, this is the principle of the thing, and
you have to have a method to practice it.
Yeah,
right. You have to have a way to put it into practice. And karate people often, even kakie is a way, but it's not a way to practice internal work from Taiji Chuan. Like you can't
Right.
do that with kake. So we have to have push hands in our system to be able to work that, to be able
That
to
feedback. Yeah.
exactly. And so our lineage founder in his book references the song of push hands. So like we should be doing it. And so I do it in my school.
Wait,
But
hold on.
90,
Did I just hear you
99% of
say
people do not.
"Song of Push Hands"?
So yeah, it's a poem. It's a poem. Yeah, but
Can we make it a rap?
I'm sure you could, John. I'm sure you
I'm
could.
not trying to make fun. I'm just like, we got to make it relevant for the kids.
There are a few classical songs, but they're poems. There's a song of the Sip Samse, the song of Pushing Hands, and so these were given to us, and they were translated sort of into English, relatively well, I suppose. But the song of the Pushing Hands was not translated into English, was not put into any of the English material, and so the majority of people here in the West who can only read the English stuff never really realized that we should be doing these things. So my organization, myself, like my teacher, we're trying to kind of push the envelope, I suppose, in regards to that. Try to bring people to a more holistic understanding of our system. So yeah.
Cool. I'm glad to hear it. Like I'm glad to hear there's seminars happening and like people getting together and like seeing that, like even in this nightmare.
Yeah, I had about 20 people. It wasn't bad.
That's good turnout. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't huge, but I definitely didn't expect. I expected to teach like 7-8 people, but it was good.
I think the fear of everybody like becoming a like isolated hermit goes against human nature, because we all are feeling probably a much more dialed up version of want to go out, want to do things. So I definitely feel that. But yeah, I think Dan, you hit the nail on the head of how much we failed this week, or at least I know I failed this week in terms of training. I got probably one solid day out of it. Part of that was just because of kind of other things going on. I had this weird bout of insomnia, or stress-induced insomnia, from about Wednesday to yesterday.
Yeah,
it's Saturday for me, so we're having this conversation across time. But I probably got between 72 hours, about 10 hours of sleep. But that was utilized. But I had to utilize karate training. I had to utilize focus, because I was getting to the point where I was like, "Oh no, I need to focus on this. Oh wait, I need to focus on this thing." So constantly just being like, "All right, mushin this, but mushin to the point where you're actually able to know what you're doing." Yeah. So it was balancing that physical lack with what I already kind of knew how to do. So it was kind of being mindless and also being mindful at the same time, because feeling the rest of the anxieties or stresses of the week was just like have to suppress that, or have to kind of let that tune out in order to get done the work. So I think that's as much as I can say about that. But I guess we'll pass the boat around and starting this out. What do you think was like the kind of best or even unexpected part of training for you this week?
I think I've been working with some of my students on some particular concepts, and this week I started seeing just some noticeable improvement in them, and they look like they're finally starting to grasp some of the things that I've been trying to work with them on the past several months. And I was starting to see just some signs that it's starting to sink in a little bit. So that felt pretty good this week, I think. For surprising, I don't know if I had anything really surprising this week. It's been pretty routine otherwise, I think.
What were the concepts that you feel that were getting sunk in?
I've been really working on, so one of the things that sort of came about with the pandemic, prior to the pandemic, we spent more time probably working on like kata application, bonkai, realistic application, that sort of stuff. And, with the pandemic, and we weren't really doing any sort of partner work, or we were training over Zoom where we have no partners. And so really started focusing more just on the internal pieces of karate. Things like, moving from center, lifting through your inner thighs, just keeping that ball posture, that sort of thing. And so this week, some of my students were working on, just that lifting through the inner thighs, that sort of thing. We were using a Bosu ball and having them just sort of push off of the ball and launch themselves into a technique. I think it was like an Uriken, a back fist. And they were real. I saw some eyes just kind of light up a bit, like, oh, that's what you've been talking about. The sort of that letting that whip drive from the ground through the body, sort of thing. And they're like, that's what you've been talking about. Like, yes, that's what it is. So, more and more that I use these sort of these props in my teaching, whether it's a Bosu ball or a mace or elastic bands, that sort of stuff. A lot of these more difficult to grasp concepts that, the internal things that are sort of hard to see, they seem to like they're starting to make more sense to students. So I think, that's something that I started picking up more over the pandemic was, just using those props. So, I'm definitely going to be incorporating that more and more into my teaching, I think, going forward.
Cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Guess.
And it's one. And the reason why I asked you that question earlier, Dan, is because, I was not, when I came up through the ranks, my teacher didn't teach me any of that internal stuff either, right?
Yeah.
I didn't pick it up. And I was probably a shodan, maybe a nidan before someone started pointing out like those things are missing. And I think, as I've talked before, like I was just hollow, like I was making the shapes of karate, but if you came over and pushed at the right angle on me, I was going to completely collapse. I didn't know how to engage my center or anything. It was all sort of just the frame, but nothing internal. And I don't want my students to have to go through that either. So I try to get that stuff introduced to them very, very early on in their training. And we spend more time working on that sort of stuff than we do just on, doing kihon or kata or anything like that. It's I want them to work and tune up the engine that drives everything more than